All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the podcast. My name is Bobby Brill, and today we're going to take another deep dive into usability and accessibility. And our guests today are going to talk about how we can bridge that gap. And joining me today is Aileen Hackett, the Director of Product Management of Accessibility, and Pratik Contractor, a Senior Manager of Product Management for Accessibility and Platform Experience. Welcome very much to the show, everybody.
Thank you, Bobby. We're both thrilled to be here. I'm, as you mentioned, the Director of Product Management for Accessibility at ServiceNow. And in my role, I'm delighted to be able to shape our accessibility strategy and roadmap and work on our goal at ServiceNow, which is to be the leader in accessibility for enterprise software. And I've been at ServiceNow for, it's almost 7 years now. It will be in May. And I started my journey here working on creating our design system and naturally got into accessibility as well. And so been working on accessibility for the last 3 years. And delighted to have on my team Pratik.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here as well. Again, my name is Pratik Contractor. I'm a senior manager for our accessibility product team, as well as platform experience. And my job here is to make sure our platform is really easy to use, intuitive, and efficient for all our users. Accessibility can play a huge role, and it's necessary for some, but it's really beneficial for everybody. And I'm really looking forward to sharing how we do that and integrate it into everything we do at ServiceNow.
Right, because there's usability, which we all understand this term of how you do something, and then there's accessibility of can I do it or can I do it easier? Aileen, explain why accessibility and usability are so closely connected.
If nothing else, this is what we want to leave you with, that they are so closely connected. Like, for example, we have the WCAG guidelines, they're international guidelines to help software makers make their software accessible and conformant to those guidelines. And there's lots of laws across the globe that enforce those, that the software has to be accessible for people with disabilities. But hand in hand with that, I feel, is making it usable as well. And once you make things usable, the accessibility naturally comes. So usability, is all about making a product easy to use. It helps users to be efficient, and it's also enjoyable to use, while accessibility ensures that everyone, regardless of their abilities, can engage with the product. So if something is highly usable but not accessible, we're excluding a significant portion of potential users. And so we want to make everyone feel included.
Right, we've talked about that on some past episodes, the number of people that have that check mark an accessibility issue, and it's an extremely high number, and it's not just somebody who may be disabled, it may be somebody like, I'm wearing glasses, and it's like, these are things that we often forget about. It's like, well, I can't get my phone far enough away to see things. I need to be able to make the screen bigger and things like that. Pratik, what's your view on this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Aileen kind of hit it on the head. But I do want to remind our audience, right, while accessibility is really important from a legal perspective, the reverse can also be true. We really don't want to make products that are just checking the box from an accessibility perspective. But because at the end of the day, if the navigation is really confusing or if the features aren't really intuitive to use, even though it may be technically accessible, it doesn't provide a great experience. So we do need to ensure there's a balance between usability and we're actually bringing people into the process and really getting their feedback early on. So we're making products that are eventually helpful and enjoyable for everybody.
Oh, great. I mean, that makes a lot of sense because it is how you use it and then making it useful, I think is the correct term. Can you give us some examples, Aileen? What's a good example for people to think about?
Okay, so there's lots of good examples. One that resonates with me is dark mode. So as you may know, we've implemented dark mode across the ServiceNow platform. So with our design system team, our mobile team, and others. And dark mode is a choice, right? So you can choose to use dark mode Anybody can choose to use it for aesthetic reasons. It also reduces eye strain for our agents who work long hours, right? But it's also really important for people who have light sensitivity or some other visual impairment. So that's a good example of something that's implemented that really helps everybody, whether you have a disability or not.
It's interesting you bring that up because for me, for a long time, dark mode seemed like it was cool, and then as I got older, I was like, oh man, it really makes it a lot easier to spend all day in front of a computer, like most of us do. It really makes a lot of sense. Pratik, what's an example that you're fond of?
Another example I would say is a recent feature that we actually released as part of our Washington release. It was called personalization of keyboard shortcuts. We all have used keyboard shortcuts to get to something we want to quickly without using a mouse. So keyboard navigation, as we know, it is critical for accessibility, especially for people who rely on assistive technology. But again, this is also a usability win. It allows all users to really work efficiently, quicker. So in the end of the day, it's a win-win both for accessibility and usability.
And these are standard now in ServiceNow, correct?
Absolutely. These are implemented across into our platform for everybody to use, and we don't force them on anybody. People have a choice. If they want to enable them, they can go and turn them on.
What are some of the newer innovations? I know with ServiceNow, we're always trying to find the next thing to really push usability and accessibility. I know, Pratik, you've been working on something that's really it's cool. I can't think of any better word. It's just a cool thing to have at ServiceNow and on the platform.
Yeah, glad you asked. In fact, something very recently we announced as part of our Yokohama release was introducing voice input for our Now Assist agentic AIs. This really is a new feature where we want to let users interact with ServiceNow really easily and hands-free. This is a game changer, really not just for people with mobility impairments, but really for everybody who prefers to use their voice and their natural language to navigate with ServiceNow and not really memorize specific workflows or specific shortcuts, but just use their natural voice. So yeah, again, voice input, that's a feature that's available today. People can try out starting our Yokohama release.
Yeah, I personally, I love voice input anything. It's just so much easier because you're doing, like, I don't know, like if you're the same, but like I got 5 things going on at once that if it'd be great I can type, I can look at something and then I can speak to the computer. It's like, oh man, I'm doing all the things. This is great. I'm super productive. This is awesome. Aileen, what's another one that is a big innovation that we're finding?
Well, we've also been lately focused on how we can help people who have neurodiverse needs, so like dyslexia or ADHD. And one thing we're really proud about is we've released this new plugin called Text Adjust. And it's essentially a Chrome extension that allows users to adapt the UI to work the way that's more useful for them, more readable for them. So, for example, you can adjust the font type, open dyslexia or other font types sometimes help people who have dyslexia. You can have spacing between the letters, spacing between your paragraphs, or better, adjust the line spacing. So it's just all more readable. And this is helpful for people with dyslexia or other challenges. But it again, can also help anybody, if you want to just see the UI in a different way. And we're delighted that that's out now in the ServiceNow store. We're getting lots of great feedback on it already. And we're in a pilot right now with a school district, which is exciting. And I think over 700 students are trying it out. So it's also free. It's something that we've given back to the community. So anybody can use it. You don't just have to use it on ServiceNow software. And it's available for everybody. So particularly pleased about that. Also, we have a lot of great user preferences that we've introduced. So, like Pratik was saying, our conformance, our accessibility conformance, our usability, comes out of the box, right? But we also offer user preferences so people can work the way they want. So, things we've introduced there are you can use patterns instead of color for data visualizations, and that's particularly helpful if you have color blindness. And we also have a reduced motion. So, we have these beautiful animations that we want to have on our platform. But of course, some people who have sensitivity to motion might want to turn those off or reduce the motion. So we offer accessibility user preferences, and that's available in the next experience for all people to use.
These are things nobody thinks about until you say it, and you're like, oh, wow. I can do that. I never thought that that would be something I could try. Pratik, what's the response been? What are you hearing from customers?
Well, in fact, the response has been very positive. We're seeing our adoption continue to grow. And again, this is not only for people with specific accessibility needs, but across the board, we're seeing people adopt these features as they're finding out new features that are getting rolled out. And again, this is not just helping a small subset, right? It's really helping a wide range of users to really improve their experience on the Now platform, making them more productive. So yeah, we're really happy to see the adoption, and we have a lot of new products in the pipeline.
That's great, because that's going to bring up the obvious transition in every conversation we have in anything technology based is AI. How are we really taking control of AI and adding it to accessibility, are we adding it to accessibility, or are we transforming accessibility? Because I know with AI, it can kind of do all these different things. Pratik, give us some deep dive insight into AI and all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what I would like to do is kind of before we get started with your specific question, I like to point out that historically accessibility has been viewed, as an afterthought, whether we like it or not. It's really been from a compliance perspective rather than a core design principle to really improve usability. And then on the other hand, usability has really prioritized efficiency really from an average user perspective, if we can call it that, and often but neglecting people with disabilities. But uh, but but recently, what we are seeing is with AI technologies and advancements in machine learning and natural language processing, we're seeing a shift, which we've been waiting for, a shift in the approach how accessibility is being embedded kind of early on into the process, and we're now have more and more tools at our disposal. So during our design process, we can weave in accessibility if people are not sure about the specific standards. There's more guidance that we can give them. Plus, there's a lot of research that is suggesting that companies that are prioritizing accessibility, they're actually seeing benefits. They're seeing profitability and better conversion rates. We talked about more usage early on. So this is not just beneficial and great for our users, but it's actually turns out it's a business and strategic priority and a benefit today as well.
Right. That's the thing. I know we've talked with other people from accessibility, and as you start thinking about this, it's like, oh, that's right. I'm making it easier for more people to not only work on the product, but be hired to use the product. And it's like, oh, wait, all I have to do is make a couple of tweaks, and now I have all these great employees, all these great admins, all of these great service providers who I never was able to hire before can easily come on and on board with just a couple switch flicks. Is that the right way to think about it? Or
Absolutely. Yeah. So now I'll kind of get to your specific question about how ServiceNow is looking at generative AI in terms of improving accessibility. One of the areas I did touch upon earlier was, again, incorporating voice interaction. And again, our eventual goal is to really have our entire platform have, voice as another medium. Some people might choose to type or use the keyboard or mouse, but then there are others who would like to just use their mouse. For example, if you want to multitask. So again, that's been a great success. We're seeing adoption continue to grow, but we're also looking at other features like summarization. Traditionally summarizations have just been from a text perspective, but we're really looking at from an angle of, we have an enterprise application. There's a lot of complex functionality and pages, and how can we really simplify, for example, this complex charts or on a dashboard? How can we really simplify all of that data into easily digestible summaries so that it can help a lot of people, but especially people with visual and cognitive disabilities. So that's one area. We're also looking internally with our internal teams, like how can we help our teams create more accessible experiences by providing AI assistance. These assistants again would help people shift left and provide them the right guidelines, where they are. So if the designer is, designing and, they forgot to add a specific tag, we would give them the guidelines and solution recommendations. So this is where AI can help. And lastly, let's not forget, from a content generation perspective, right? So there's a lot of content. For example, support documentation, may have images. This is where AI can come in and help suggest text recommendations or alt text for images. And this can be a huge step forward in making sure that our visual content, is more inclusive for all.
When you're making content, that's all. There's so many things that people forget really needed to be at. I mean, alt text is you mentioned is a big one. That you're looking at a data graph. It's like I have no idea what any of this is saying. Give me a hint. Give me some guidance in where I'm going. I mean, this really does change the game, right?
Yeah, and we've actually in Yokohama, we've introduced some what we call accessibility checkers. So if you are somebody who's uploading content to Knowledge with, images and other things like that, we now have an accessibility checker in there that alerts you and helps you to make sure that what you're uploading is accessible, like adding alt text or making sure that you have, the right accessibility so that anybody can access that knowledge article. Likewise, in Yokohama, we did that in Service Catalog too. So if you're adding catalog items into Service Catalog, we have that. And in previous releases, we introduced other things like in Theme Builder, if you're applying your brand or your theme, there's a color contrast checker, so an accessibility checker there to make sure that as you choose your brand colors, that they are accessible and have the right color contrast. And we're going to be introducing more of that across other parts of the platform. And we've also introduced into UI Builder. So we've got feedback from our customers who are looking for more help as they customize and configure and make workspaces. And so we have checkers in there. But what Pratik was saying, around AI is interesting because we have these checkers in place right now. We can do more. So rather than just warning somebody, you have a problem or we can also help them to remediate and do more with AI. So that's kind of exciting for me. Also, the possibilities of using AI to help with accessibility testing and auditing and remediating. So that's a whole area that we're exploring also, what we can do in that realm with AI.
That's the gold standard of, well, here's an issue, here's your solution, and here's how to fix it. That's far more helpful than, well, something's not right. Okay, well, now what? Well, here's how you fix it, and this is what's going to work, and you can move forward.
What I feel as well is that sometimes, people are a little bit daunted because they're not an accessibility SME and they might feel, a little bit it's difficult for them to come up with a solution. Whereas, we want to do as much as we can to scale that and help them. We have SMEs, of course, across ServiceNow, but we want to help customers and partners and our own internal employees too, to be able to get to resolution quicker.
Yeah, that's the goal. I mean, is let's solve our problem and move forward all the time, always moving forward. But I've got a question that comes up with all the other side of the conversation in AI. How are we making this good AI? How are we making what comes back and what we're building fit the ethical considerations of AI?
I'm glad you mentioned that. One thing that's really important to the community of people and who have disabilities is that AI models are trained with them being considered in it. We run the risk of AI bias, and in the past, communities might have been overlooked in the training of models, and so we want to make sure that we have diverse data sets, that human oversight is crucial, and making sure that we include people with disabilities and their experiences as we build out models.
Pratik, what is your opinion on AI? How can we make this ensure that we are making good AI deliveries?
The other thing that comes to mind for me is, we do want to use AI, but at the same time, over reliance on AI. That's something that we need to be mindful, especially if we're designing systems. We want to think about, prioritizing safety and transparency and user choice. What I mean by that is, how is my data being used? So if I'm getting trained, whether my data is being used to train other other AI systems, or if I have a choice. For example, um, we might suggest a particular text response for an issue, but let's say if the person doesn't like the response, or we all are aware of hallucination, we do want to offer an alternative way for people to manually put in alt text, for example. So while AI can suggest accessibility improvements, again, my view is that it shouldn't replace human judgment, and I feel human in the loop is very critical.
And that kind of goes to privacy as well, correct?
AI-powered personalization, does need to be built with privacy in mind. Ultimately, we need to ensure that, people understand how their data is being used for a given feature, and then ultimately really give them the choice so they can control how their data is being used, and if they are comfortable, if they want to go ahead and use the feature or not, or just, fall back to the way things were, without AI. So we do need to kind of acknowledge that and give people the choice.
Aileen, to take us out, what are you excited about here at ServiceNow when it comes to usability and accessibility?
I am excited about what AI can bring to the conversation to improve the experience for people. I'm also excited about, we're always, the challenge with accessibility is always moving from being reactive to more proactive, right? So in the product development lifecycle, you're trying to shift left and making sure that accessibility is baked in as you plan and design a new feature or a product. And so with I think that's going to really help us to be able to do that. So, I'm making it an integral part of our development and life cycle. So, very excited to see how that helps us all.
Pratik, what are you excited about?
For me, really, it comes to mind is user empowerment. I mean, we have so many tools that are at our disposal now, and there's kind of more tools with the innovations around AI. But really, at the end of the day, really giving users the controls to really, make them powerful, make their experience easier. But at the end of the day, like letting each person decide how they want to use and what tools they want to use to best kind of suit their needs and be successful at what they do. So yeah, for me, it's user empowerment.
Well, I've got one more question I got to ask you both, because this is something that, as I've learned more about, and I think more people do, you're like, oh wow, I'm thinking about more ways to use it, and things that can maybe inspire me in the work that I'm doing. Give me one more final thought. I know that I already asked for another one, but give me another one. Give me one more that people can start thinking about. It's always good to have two things to lead out on. Aileen, give me something. Give me some more juice.
Sure. I think just a reminder to everybody that it's not just about accessibility conformance. Sure, that is really important to make sure that we're meeting the WCAG guidelines, we're conformant. But when you're designing and developing software, you should also consider, is it usable? And reach out to people with disabilities to help you with that. I mean, they should be foremost in this conversation, making sure that what we've developed, it might be conformant, but is it also usable? And also that making something usable for people with disabilities, it might be essential for them, but it's useful for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, just like as we all mature in our age and have glasses and screens and different things, and I mean, just going outside, I can't see my screen. I can change it. It's like it seems like mind-boggling that was not there. Prati, give us the last little bit of wisdom before we go.
There's a lot of new technology coming, especially AI. It gives us the opportunity to really make our digital experiences more inclusive for all people. But really, at the end of the day, we need to ensure that we use it wisely and we use it for the benefit of the people that we build it for.
Perfect. I mean, you couldn't ask for more pearls of wisdom in that short amount of time. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you have any questions, head over to www.servicenow.com. And to take a look at our doc site to get all of your information on how to use the product and to solve all of your solutions, go to www.servicenow.com/docs. I'm your host, Bobby Brill. Thanks for listening.